So I would like to introduce someone who does not need to be introduced, our treasure here in Canada, Dr. Zayas Stefan. He has a master's in physics from the University of Victoria. He lives in Midland. He's been tasty trading since 2015 when he came to the live Tasty Trade show at the CBC building, and then he jumped right in, and he's been one of our beloved ever since. He's one of the greatest assets in our group because he's the one who digs into all the details and helps us figure out things that we cannot wrap our heads around. So he is going to share his knowledge today, which IB should be paying him for because he's really helping them out and helping us trade the Tasty Trade way before Tastyworks comes, which hopefully will be in a few months, but we'll see. So without further ado, please keep your mics muted. Type in the chat. Luke is going to be monitoring the chat, I believe, and we will let Dr. Zayas get through his presentation, which is being recorded. Go, take it away, Stefan.
Thank you so much, Daria. I love the outfit. And thanks everyone for coming today. And so if anyone's watching the recording of this right now, make sure you watch the first one before this one. This is the second installment of the IB demo webinar. These are just things that I do or that I've picked up over the years, and I thought I'd share them because I wish I knew these things when I started. It's a little tricky to use the software, but you know, it's the best we've got right now. So thanks everyone for coming. I will start sharing my screen. I'm going to go through 10 things. I'm going to go fairly quickly because we are limited to the 40 minutes and we're already 5 minutes into that. Try and get through all these things. I'll start with the very first one. Was a question from Wayne, which is a margin example, and I was going to do the smalls for that. So I am wearing my small shirt today, supporting the small exchange. I am a member, and if you guys aren't a member, you should jump on that. It's only $100 for life membership. I've put all the small exchange products right here on my watch list in my favorites list here. So we've got the sticks, the small technology 60, we've got the SM75, which is the small stock 75, FX SME, which is the small US dollar, small precious metals, the 2-year treasury yield, which is a brand new product, the 10-year treasury yield, which we've had for a while, and the 30-year US treasury yield, which is also another brand new product. So I'll start with just clicking on one of these. It's going to chart it here and just go to do a buy. So if the market was open right now, it would give me a mid price. I just put in the mid price or whatever price I want, go to check the margin. And this is the number I look at here. $550 is what I need in my account right now to trade that product. It's a $6,800 product, right? So this is the power of futures. It's giving me margin on this. It's lending me money to make this trade. So I only have to put up $550, but I'm trading a $6,800 product, right? Only a 29-cent commission. I guess that's because I'm a member. It's only a slightly higher if you're not a member. So that is the number I look at. Now this is the number, technically 440 is all I need after the trade is open. So that's why they call it maintenance margin. But I don't really pay attention to that so much. I just look at the initial margin. So go ahead and transmit that. It actually puts the trade right on the chart, and I'll talk about that in a little while too. So then if we went to say the SM75, we could do the same thing, buy on this, put in the mid price if the markets were open, and then check the margin. Now this one's a lot more, $6,900 notional value of the product, but look how much margin you have to put up. So this is just the way IB works. They don't really margin this as well as some of the other brokers would, like Tastyworks, of course, which I'm pointing to right on my picture there. We would love to use Tastyworks because, you know, they get margin, they get how all this works, they get risk. You know, some of the other brokerages are not that good with this yet. Anyway, so 1,728 is what I have to have right now to place the trade, and then 1,382 is after it's open. Now, of course, with futures products, the margin can change. It's dependent on volatility, on how close you are to expiration, and a bunch of different things. And I did talk about that a little bit in the first seminar. Okay, so then say we went to the small precious metals. We could do a sell on that as well. So instead of a buy, I'm doing a sell. And same thing, checking the margin. So this one takes 1,141, and it's a $7,600 notional product. So really it's just the price of the product times 100. So just like a stock. This is what's so great about the small products. 76.12 is the closing price here. Just multiply that by 100 and you get your notional value. So it's like 100 shares. Very simple.
Before you go on to the next topic, we had some questions for margin. So what do you want to do? Save them till the end or go back to
Oh, I
margin?
should have asked. Actually, when I started showing the margin questions, I should have asked because that was Wayne's question. So I should have checked. Does that answer your question, Wayne? Let me hear him because I can't see the chat.
Can we use margin for option contract?
Absolutely not. You have to have your own money in your account to trade options. There's no borrowing money to trade options.
Okay, so when the margin profile shows the transaction, it's just a hypothetical if I was to engage with a security then? Because I always get the margin message, but that's just hypothetical.
So I realized afterwards what Wayne was actually asking here. He's saying that when you sell an option, as an example, IB shows that costs you margin, but it's really not margin. It's actually buying power reduction. So there's no borrowing of any money going on. You just have to put up a certain amount of money to trade options. And I will show an example of that when I sell a put in T.
I think what helps, and Puyan and I were having a discussion on the chat, Stefan, I know you didn't read it, but basically I think IB has it backwards, which is very confusing. So it talks about margin, but it's actually buying power. And when it talks about stock buying power, it's actually margin. So for Wayne, if you have $1,000 of cash, you can actually buy $3,000 of stock, and IB calls that buying power. It's actually margin. You're going to pay interest on that extra 2,000. Whereas Stefan is saying, when you trade options, they call it margin, but it's actually buying power reduction. That's what they call it in Tastyworks, which is way less confusing. It's that money is set aside and held in your account, and you can't use it for anything else. And you can always check that number when you go to your portfolio page, Stefan, and you can see the maintenance requirement right there. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess this number here, I'll get to that as well. I was going to just show an example of a stock, right? So you can borrow money to buy stock. So for example, AT&T at $29, it's $2,900 notional value for 100 shares, right? But you're only putting up $870. So that is margin. You're borrowing money.
If you had 1,000 and if you were buying $3,000 worth of AT&T, that would be margin. Here it would say your maintenance margin is 1,000, but you would actually control $3,000 of stock, and you would be charged interest on $2,000.
Got it.
Okay, we're good with that?
Yeah.
So I just transmitted that order, and so it's right here on the chart, and then to cancel the order, I just click that C button there. Thanks for that explanation, by the way, Luke. Okay, so I'm on to number 2. I'm going to talk about memory allocation. I did have some problems with IB going slow on me, and I discovered that maybe one of the ways to fix that was to increase my memory allocation. So I'm going to show a screenshot of this. You would just go up here, File, Global Configuration, and it just looks like this. It's the first one down, General. And there's this box called memory allocation in megabytes. So the default for that is like 760 something. So I just multiplied that by 5 or 6 to go up to about 4,600 megabytes. And the recommendation from IB is not to go too much higher than 4,000. Hopefully that's helping me. I have no real way to know if it's really helping my performance or not, but I have had performance issues with IB in the past. Okay, on to number 3, which is the alert button. I'm going to go to MES, which is the micro S&P 500 futures contract. So if I was to just click the alert button here, I showed this in the last webinar. I got to click this alert outside regular trading hours, and I could just activate this alert. So now when the price comes up above that, it will send me an alert, and I could put one below, and same thing. Now this button, what I noticed was when I restarted my IB just this last week to try and improve the performance, I uninstalled everything and I reinstalled everything as they recommended I do. And some of these buttons weren't here. And then I realized that I must have put that there at some point. So if some of you don't have that, you would just go click the sprocket button here, which takes you into the configuration settings for the charts. You actually have to have this ticked here. These are called hot buttons here, the alert, the buy, and the sell on the chart. So just make sure you have this selected as toolbar, and this is the toolbar up here. So that's why I have access to that setting alerts really quickly. You know, that's because that's the hot button toolbar there. Okay, chart trader. Okay, so I was going to show an example with MES, the S&P 500 micro future. So I have no orders in right now, but I could put an order in. So maybe somewhere below the market. This is taking just a tiny bit of margin to put on this huge product here. Not that huge, but bigger than the smalls. But the reason for this is it's taking into account all my other positions I have in futures. So this is span margining in action here. Because I lean always a little bit short in my account with futures, it's taking that into account when I'm trying to put on a new position that's a long. So I'm trying to buy one contract of MES. It's taking just a tiny bit, a few $100s. Okay, so when I transmit that, now it puts that on the chart, right? So if I lift up this dotted line, I can see that order. I can change it to a GTC or whatever, update it, change the price, the limit price if I wanted to. And the way I got that on the chart was right click, chart parameters. It's this tick box right here called chart trader. If you don't have that ticked, it won't show that dotted line there. Some people don't like that. It took me a while to get used to that, but now I like it because I like to be able to see those orders right there. Now, the other thing that you need to do here, which I find kind of silly, but once you figure it out once, then you have to tick these boxes here that say keep chart up to date, show data outside of regular trading hours, and show data in user time zone. I have no idea why this would be an option and not like a default, because this was not default for me. Like, of course I want to see the data in my own time zone. And of course I want to see the data outside regular trading hours. Of course I want you to keep the chart up to date. So anyway, you just make sure you tick those, apply and okay. If I didn't have this one ticked, the show outside regular trading hours, look what happens to the chart. It's just like, it becomes disjointed for the overnight session. But of course I want to know what the overnight session is doing for futures. So this is a futures product, of course. Okay, so that was number 5. Okay, I'm on to number 6. So there was a question from someone in our forum about closing iron condors. Okay, so I've got an iron condor in the Japanese yen here and the Aussie dollar here. Okay, so remember I showed in the first session, you can flip these iron condors. So it's showing me I've got a +1 position in this Aussie dollar iron condor, right? But I can flip that as well. And now it's a -1, right? So if I'm short this iron condor, I just right click and I click close. And it routes the order up here, right? And I can look at my average price here is 0.0039. So maybe I would want to buy that back for 50%. It automatically put in a buy. So then I would go and find the 50% in there, whatever it is, and then check my margin performance. And it's doing this for a debit. So this is how I know I'm buying back the iron condor, and then just transmit. Okay, and it actually puts that right on the chart too, because this is now charting the combo, not the Aussie dollar, which I find not that useful, but whatever, that's just how it does it. So now if I was the other way, if I flip this now back to +1, and I just right click and click close. Now this time it's putting in a sell order, right? It's the same thing. So you just have to realize this is how IB shows things. So if I wanted now a smaller number, I would go now for a smaller number because I want to buy it back for something smaller. So then check the margin on that, margin performance. It's still a debit. So this is what I'm looking at here. When I go to close the order, I want to buy it back for a debit. And it's got a negative value in there. So you just have to realize that's how IB shows these things. This is the exact same thing I just showed when it was flipped the other way. All right, so let's look at some of my other positions here. I'm using just a little bit more buying power than I'm comfortable with right now, but that's because I know I had a couple big positions that I held over the weekend that I didn't open opposing positions against. So for example, where is my NASDAQ? Okay, so I'm short an out of the money call in the NASDAQ. 27 days to expiration. Now I know this is a big position. So if I show margin impact, this one position is taking up $18,000 in margin, in buying power. You can do that on any position, of course. And because I'm naked short a call, it doesn't bother me too much. What I'll do is to reduce that margin, I'll just buy a call against it. So I'll go further out of the money. This is the 18 delta. I'll just go out and buy like maybe a 10 delta or a 5 delta further out, and that will immediately lower my margin requirement. Now, I didn't do that on Fridays, so that's why it ended up happening this way. Now, if you don't have this show margin impact, so Luke showed us this in the last session we did, you just type in the search here, type in margin, and it'll show up, and then you click on it, and now it'll be on your list for the future. So again, there's just a few $100s for the smalls, and for the MES, just a few $100s for the micro ES. Now, some of the other ones, this Twitter strangle is an inverted strangle. So this is one of these positions on an individual company that kind of messed me up. I had to go inverted on this strangle. So the margin on this is going to be not great. You know, $4,000 for one strangle. That's a bit too much for me, but that's the price you pay when you go inverted on a strangle. My stitch fix is now uninverted. I uninverted when I rolled it. So it's a little bit smaller margin, 3,000 on that one. I generally try to keep my positions under a few percent of buying power in my account. There's always some wiggle room there, but that's kind of the way I try to do it. So that was the margin impact. Did that answer your question, Chepa?
Yes, you're showing me exactly what I try to do. But the thing is, mine, the showing margin is not one of the choices in the opening window.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
just have
get it.
Type it in.
you have to search it. You just have to type it in for the first time. That's just how IB works. Sometimes it doesn't show you things until you find it somewhere on the list or type it in to search for it.
Stefan, show Chepa where you type in show margin so that she can find it.
Exactly. Yeah. Mine is not there.
Look,
Now
yeah,
what do you do?
slow down, you're too fast.
Oh, you type
There's
in.
a search.
Oh, it's a search. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just want to say on this Japanese yen, for example, you know, this is an iron condor taking up about $1,000 in margin, Aussie dollar, only 700. So this is why I like to use futures options too, and even defining risk on futures. It uses a very small amount of margin for a nice bang for my buck here. I'm getting $7 in theta on that Aussie dollar, and I'm getting almost $7 in theta on the Japanese yen as well. So that's why I like using the futures. Yeah, go ahead, Luke.
Stefan, can I throw in, please, a bonus Tasty Trader tip for this portfolio page? Click on your unrealized P&L column at the header.
Yeah.
Right click.
Right click. Yeah.
Click on the little arrow on the bottom.
Unrealized.
Keep going
Okay,
all the way
yeah.
down. Yeah, it'll give you more choices. Click
Yeah.
on display value and click both.
Okay. So
Okay,
it's
now it will calculate, and you'll see that, for example, your silver is already at 56%. It's time to close it.
Yeah.
And so is your NG there. So good on you.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot, Luke, for showing that. Now, there's two schools of thought with that, of course, is do you hold till the 21 days or do you close at 50%? It's just preference in that case. You know, is there something else I would do with that buying power to open another position? Do I still want to be in silver? This is a short put spread, so I'm short the 11 delta put and then long the 8 delta or 9 delta puts. So I like being long silver, so I kind of don't want to close that, but you know, these are just personal preferences. Okay, but thank you for that tip, Luke. Of course, I like that portfolio theta column there. So all these portfolio thetas here should add up to my total theta 278 in my account. Oh, look, as we went on in this webinar, the SPX delta value went to 0, which is a terrible feature. IB, you got to fix that. It cannot go to 0. That's stupid. Anyway, okay, that's my venting about IB. Here's another little tip that I discovered after doing the webinar. So I'm adding it in here. What I realized is you can actually refresh that number. On a Mac keyboard, you would hit the Option Command R button all together, and it's restarting my data to the platform without having to restart the whole software. And on a Windows machine, you would hit Control Alt R all together, and it would do the same thing. So there you can see now my portfolio SPX delta value is updated to minus 6.2. So if I multiply that by 10, that's minus 62 SPY deltas. So that's my beta weighted SPY. However, the problem with IB is you always have to keep in mind that this does not include futures or futures options. So that's a real deficiency of the platform. And also, I just checked on my phone app, and this number is different. On my phone, it actually says minus 16 point something. That's minus 160 SPY delta. So that's a big difference between the phone app and the Trader Workstation. So that's another problem with IB. They've got to fix that. This is another one of the annoying things we just have to put up with in IB, unfortunately. Okay, so last two things I wanted to show was a poor man's covered call and a poor man's covered put. This is something that has come up sometimes. There was actually even a call into Tasty Trader, a confirm and send question about poor man's covered call and poor man's covered put from a Canadian. So it's kind of funny that I would hear that question from a Canadian, because this is why it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I like to untick this weeklies and quarterlies button here because I don't care about the weeklies and quarterlies. But if I wanted to say put on a covered call in AT&T, so I have to have Strategy Builder turned on here. And I just click this advanced button here and I go add stock leg, right? So now I'm buying 100 shares of AT&T. Now I want to sell in the front month expiration, the out of the money call. So I'll just sell this 30 call, 31 cents of extrinsic value. And they call it a buy right here. And then I would just put in the mid price for that and look at the margin it's taking up is 901. So it's $901 of margin. So this is borrowing money to buy the stock to then sell a call against it, right? Because the notional value on that stock is 2,900, right? And I'm putting up 901. Okay, so what I wanted to do now was, what if we compare that covered call now to a poor man's covered call? So maybe I go out to the 108 days expiration and I buy an in the money call, right? When you're buying a call, you don't want to buy a lot of extrinsic value. So I can just look over at the put side here and see what extrinsic value the calls on this side have. Does that make sense? If I say buy the 18 call, so hit the ask, I'm only paying for a few cents, like between 5 and 9 cents of extrinsic value on that call. But now I want to sell an out of money call in the front month that has all extrinsic value. So I'm selling the same call. I'm selling the 30 call in the front month and then buying an in the money call in the back month. Look, at the margin impact is 0, right? So it's not borrowing any money to do this. Just like we said a few minutes ago, you can't borrow money to trade options, but you're paying a debit for it. So it's really the same thing, right? Like it's using $10, which is $1,000 in buying power. I actually have to put up that money to make this trade. So really there's no difference doing a poor man's covered call and a covered call. And then the other example I was going to show was the covered put. So if I do the same thing, AT&T, add the stock leg, but now I'm going to sell 100 shares. And now I'll go to the out of the money put. So maybe the 28 put in the front month. So the margin it's taking me on that is $870. And then if I do now poor man's covered put, so go to the 118 days expiration, buy an in the money put, and then I can always look over at the call side for the extrinsic value. So the extrinsic value is almost nothing on the 40 strike. So I'm going to buy the 40 strike put, and then in the front month, I'm going to sell the out of the money put, say the 28 strike. So again, no margin impact, but I'm putting up $1,000 to make this trade. So really, there's no point in doing a poor man's covered call or poor man's covered put, in my opinion. I mean, there could be other reasons why you would want to do it because you want to see it that way in your account or whatever, but that's
Hey,
just.
Stefan.
Yep.
Can you also just sell an in the money put to simulate a covered call?
That's a good point. This is the front month. Yeah. So sell an in the money.
So yeah, sell an in the money put.
Yeah.
That will also, if you look at the risk graph, that will also simulate a.
Yeah. And you're putting up $1,000 in margin.
The same thing. It's just another way of, if you wanted to do a covered call, this is also another way. So,
Yep.
you know, it's not taking up any more margin. It's, as far as a risk profile goes, it's the same trade.
That's a really great point. Thanks, Jim, for pointing that out. And then if you want to know how much extrinsic value are you selling on that put, just look over here. It's about 30 cents. So yeah, that
exactly
works.
the same thing. You were going to buy the stock and sell that call. It's the same idea.
All right, so that's everything on my list. The bonus thing I wanted to just show up, which I thought of just before this, was to see which orders I have on right now. So just go open this new window with my orders, right? So this has got all the orders I put on today and other days. But then the other way I like to do this too is I have another tab down here.
Or Stefan, you can also have them as a tab in your portfolio.
Yeah, that's the other way to do it, is up here, you
Yeah.
mean, right? So I've got my portfolio and favorites. Everyone has a different way they like to do these things. I personally just like to click down here because then I want to see just my orders and nothing else cluttering up the screen. You could argue also like having my options chain over here on the left is kind of cramped here, but that's just the way I got used to doing it. So anyway, you can always make new workspaces here to put your orders. The trade log is the other one I look at. So
in trades, Stefan, you can add your realized column. So then you can see in the trades page that you were showing, if you add it in the realized, it works.
You can add it. Okay. That's a good point.
In this page. Yeah, and it'll show in blue.
Okay. That's a good point. Thanks. Okay, so let's end that here. Here's a little bonus that I wanted to add in that I recorded afterwards, and that is charting a pairs trade. So here's a chart of the 2-year treasury yield. And if I wanted to do a pairs trade between, say, the 2-year and the 10-year, I would just start typing on a new line. And instead of clicking futures here, I click the down arrow and click combinations, future spread. And then I click on the pair or leg by leg. And now I have to retype the one I want to buy. So type 2Y SME. And I click the infinity symbol for the continuous contract. And it's already put in the cell. So I'm going to put in the 10Y SME, enter. Then click the infinity symbol and just click OK, and it pops up this window here. So now if I click on that newly created pair here, this actually charts the pair. So that's the 2-year minus the 10-year. So this chart is obviously trending downward. So the 10-year yield is going up faster than the 2-year yield is going up. So if you wanted to buy this pair, you would just go right click and buy, and it'll route the order for both of them. So it's actually showing a negative value here. Sometimes people like to chart these pairs with positive values. So you could just do it the opposite way. So just type anything here and click combination smart, then pair leg by leg. So now this time I'm going to type in the 10-year first, continuous contract, and then the 2-year second. So buying the 10-year, selling the 2-year. And now when I click on this chart, it's trending upward, and these are now positive values. Some people like to see it this way. So again, you could buy this pair, and now you're buying a 10-year and selling a 2-year for a debit. It's giving me some warnings, I think, because the markets are closed right now. I haven't actually tried routing one of these pairs, but I don't actually know if this will let me transmit this. But you could do this with other treasury products or gold versus silver or other types of pairs trades. Thanks so much, everyone, for attending.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you,
Zaya.
Stefan.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, everyone, for their attention. I went pretty fast for this, but I think that was good to kind of keep it all contained. And then I'll go and edit this video and post it for other Canadians that might be trading. Of course, we want to be using Tastyworks as soon as possible. That would be, a dream come true to be able to use Tastyworks. It is painful sometimes to use IB. And I had all kinds of problem with the software freezing up. It seems like that's corrected today because my software did not freeze up at all today. And I just reinstalled everything in the last few days. So I guess that might
Because the market's closed.
could be, yeah. Who knows?
And no, Clement, there is not a way to check cumulative P&L. You would just have to download in the reports. You can download it and copy it into a spreadsheet and do it yourself.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.